Hi, and welcome to the Why People Buy podcast, a podcast about the motivations and buyer psychology of growth in the food and beverage industry. I'm Seth Waite, your host and partner at Schaefer, a buyer psychology firm. And today we're connected with and want to welcome Ben Tompkins.
Hey,
So,
how's it going? Thanks for having me.
yeah, no, we're super so excited. You have a very unique perspective, and I'm really looking forward to diving into that. But first, I want to start with just a few kind of rapid fire hot take questions about food and beverage. So the very first one is, what is your current favorite savory snack?
Current favorite savory snack? Probably landing in the beef jerky category. There's a lot of options though, so I probably swing between like jalapeno chomps or some sort of like Kirkland brand offshoot. I'm a big private label guy. I find that I can't give up the price point, so somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But beef jerky, that's what I got.
Yep. All about the meat sticks. So no, that's great. Next one. What's your current favorite beverage? Could be cold or hot.
Favorite beverage. Okay, so I drink a lot of these. I literally have one on my desk. These just came out, they've got like fiber in them, but and the protein as well. But I really like those Oikos. I probably drink one of those a day. Just go and grab them out of our ready beverage section. That or I'm a huge fan of Celsius and always drinking some Celsius.
That's cool. And then last one, do you have a favorite breakfast food?
Favorite breakfast food. So my son eats like 3 to 4 eggs every morning. So it's got to be eggs, I guess. I used to not like eggs at all, but that's what we eat now. So so I like them. But they have to have a lot of cheese. Does cheese count
That's
as the breakfast food? We'll just say cheese with a side of eggs.
Yeah. Could be your favorite savory snack. You could
Yeah,
have the
yeah,
list.
perfect. Yeah, both the cheese could be a beverage too.
100%. I'm all for that. I like it in powder form. I'll take it anyway.
Perfect.
No, that's awesome. Well, let's get to know you a little bit. We know some of the things you like from a food standpoint, but I'd love to just have you tell us if a friend was introducing you to us, what would they say? And it could be a friend in the industry or outside, but how would they talk about you?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was thinking about like, okay, my friends in real life. You say friend in the industry, and I think about like one of the other store directors that I'm closest with. Man, he would probably call me the value guy. So when I trained with him, all the time, like we'd be training, and I'd be like, well, what's the value in that? What's the value in this? Like he'd be like, hey, we're gonna have to go and we're gonna stand and we're gonna watch these people do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, are we going to make any money off of that? I was like, how much money is that going to generate the company? Like if me and you are standing here and we're doing this thing, I was like, what is the value? Let's get down to it. And so he would probably introduce me as the king of value. Cause that's sort of like a framework I use all the time. Like if something's going to, take us, X amount of time and cost X amount of dollars, it better generate, something greater than X or something greater than X amount of dollars on the output. So, especially in Target, there's all these things that we can like get really granular about. And so that's what comes to mind.
That's awesome. And how would you introduce yourself? If you were taking off the cap of someone else, what does that introduction look like?
Yeah. So my name is Benjamin Tompkins. I'm a store director at Target. I'm a father of two. I've got a 3-year-old and a 4-month-old. And I've got a really awesome wife. Basically was born at Target. So I started at 18. It was my second job out of high school. And then just kind of looked around. I was a cashier and said, if I'm not going to be good at this, I probably won't be good at anything. So I might just well get really, really good at this. And so I was in college and I was doing Target, and then eventually they, offered me a team lead position, and I just kept on trying to go up the ladder. Eventually got promoted to store director when I was 25. And so I've been a store director of a $45 million store for the last 2 years. It's been awesome. I absolutely have a huge passion for generating great leaders, and just showing people that like retail is a career that can be amazing for you. It changed my life and it can change your life. And that's like, honestly, going into being a store director is my favorite thing about it is like, hey, we've got this vehicle that Target's created for us for value generation that like, if you don't know what you want to do with your life, like go work at retail, because we just need people that are enthusiastic and passionate and like willing to try. And then you can go like really make a great life for yourself. And then recently I found that all of my free time I spent like listening to podcasts about founders and brands and being into entrepreneurship. And I wanted to find a way to like marry those two things. So I've started just making as much content as possible on LinkedIn, just researching brands and learning about stuff. And that's how I found you. Saw that you were doing like some really awesome research and had some cool hot takes. It's fun. So yeah, I'm passionate about brands, passionate about growing great leaders. And I like working for Target. It's been awesome for me.
That's great. Yeah. retail is tough. I mean, that's the reality, right? Like it combines so many different skill sets. Um, and I think most people don't realize you mentioned your target location is what you said, 45 million.
Yeah, 45 million.
Yeah. And
Up
so you're thinking
to
about
like
that.
120 team members or so, going into this Q4.
Yeah. Like that's a large business, right? Like, and so you look at it and you have this connection where at the local level, you have a really substantial business, employees that are reporting to you and that you're responsible for helping to develop and lead and all these kind of things. And then you've got this big perspective as well, at the global level. So I love that. Um, and I love the, like, I grew up in Target as part of the process. Um, well, our topic, right, is buyer psychology. Like that's the conversation that we talk about the most, and we go back to this idea of why do people buy? And you have a really unique perspective. So a lot of times I'm talking to CPG founders who are trying to get their products into a Target, right? They want to be on shelf, and you have this perspective on the other side. And so, just as kind of a general question to get us started, when you're in your role, like what are you seeing from a buyer psychology standpoint? What are things that you see where people are making decisions in stores, and what are some of those most influential things, I guess, that you might have spotted over the years?
Yeah. I think I'd probably break it down into three categories, and I haven't really defined this until this very second, so bear with me. But there's like a lot of like cyclical buying. So you'll come into like get more toilet paper, get more detergent or something like that. And then a lot of our guests, especially at Target, they love newness. And so if there's something that's new in a category, or like, we do redo a seasonal section, like people will come for the newness or they'll be inspired by the newness. And then the third one, and this is the thing that I'm extremely passionate about, and I hope that Target can continue to like push the issue on as we train our team, is just like consulted buying. So something specialty, whether it's like a small appliance or a guest doesn't quite know whether or not they need it or if it's good. I find that that's where there's like the biggest gap, probably in most of the market. Where if I walk by a guest and they pick up like this literally happened the other day, they pick up a bag of pretzels. It was I think the brand is Stellar Maui Monk. Not to shout them out specifically, but that's what they picked up. And I said, hey, people like that flavor a lot. It's really good. And she's like, okay, I'll try it, and put two in her basket. But if I didn't say, hey, people like that, she probably wouldn't have bought it. And so she probably maybe would have read about it and maybe looked it back down. Like that's what. And so I think, I mean, I'm sure you have way more data to back this up, but just like the amount of recommending something to someone seems to be the big thing. So I would call that possibly consulted buying. And then yeah, everything else I see is a lot of people coming in to get their groceries, get their normal stuff, or coming in for newness.
Yeah. No, I love that. And it's interesting, right? Because retail has something that direct to consumer often doesn't, which is that very human to human interaction. Um, what role do you think, you mentioned the fact that recommendations are important, but you've got this opportunity to have team members in store. Like, what kind of role do they play in creating a positive experience for consumers who are discovering new products or
Yeah.
just going through that process?
So a lot. So the store has to look good. It's got to be clean, or people aren't going to shop there. You have to be friendly and inviting, or people aren't going to shop there. But when it comes to actually specifically buying something, I think the unlock I try to have with my team specifically is like, what are the things that you buy? So like, you're a team member and you're working in the pasta aisle. Like, what have you bought in this aisle recently, and like why? And when a guest comes through, let them know what you buy in this aisle and why. And I know that that sounds kind of strange, but like, my biggest passion probably in the whole store is board games. Growing up, I played a ton of them. If I walk by, and I probably walk by the board game aisle 30 times a day, and I will see a guest in there, and I just walk up and I say, hey, if you need any recommendations, I've played a lot of these, like let me know. And then they'll, say, hey, I've got this many people that I'm playing with or whatever. And it's hard to get team members to be willing to engage in that same way. My dad was in car sales my entire life, so I totally see like the importance of closing the deal and getting in there and making an offer. And I don't think that everybody sees retail associates or team members as people who should be selling. But I think that if they are, especially if for your audience of CPG founders, like if you can galvanize the people who are putting your product on the shelf about your product, like you'll see way more of a return in my experience than if nobody knows about what your product might be.
Well, that seems like then there's this really big opportunity to come in and turn the retailers into heroes if you're a CPG brand, right? Like sampling and taste testing and all of these kind of things. We think about demos a lot. I think CPG founders do all the time, but they're often thinking about how do I get consumers to have this experience when you're calling out something that I think is really awesome, which is like, how do I make sure that every person that's working in the department that I care about, where my product is on shelf, has tried it, has had questions answered, all of those kind of things. Are there brands doing that kind of work at Target in your store?
Yeah, so we have sampling mostly at our super targets. So like I'm not at a super target location, so we go through like a third party and we offer it as part of like when you're doing your target launches and getting brands into stores, you can get sampling and it works. And I don't want to be disparaging of anything, but it's hard to get super engaged people through these third party sampling services. So that I find that where we've had a lot of success is Target is leaning more into team member led sampling. So we're going to be doing a few events throughout November and December where it's like specifically in toys as we're trying to get like excitement around that, where we're training team members, giving them a script, being intentional about how they can create like a really awesome moment of joy with our guests. And I'm hoping to see like a lot of dividends on the back end. I'm hoping that brands, will sort of negotiate with Target about, hey, I want your team to be really passionate about this product. Like, how can we make that happen? In certain markets, and even if you go, let's say, 2 stores in every state, like you don't have to do 2,000 stores, but if you can hit, larger regional areas, you can actually get a lot of education out for your product.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is a great way to start that process. And to your point, it's just about excitement, right? Like you go back to the pretzel example, and that recommendation made all the difference because this person, I always feel like the moment that, and then the data backs it up, the moment someone flips that product over, they're in a really precarious situation where it's like 50-50, and they could go either way. They could put it right back on the shelf. And if they walk away from it, chances are they're not going to like go pick that up again.
Yeah,
So
I love
capturing,
Elon. Sorry, Elon Lee, the creator of Exploding Kittens, has a really great little tidbit about this, where he talks about the entire purpose of the board game box, Exploding Kittens, is to convince, in any board game packaging, is to convince the guest to flip it over. And I don't necessarily know if that could be said for all CPG packaging, or if it holds true, but when you think about like from a like psychology perspective, when you pick up a board game, if you flip it over and says, "Hey, this will be fun for 3 to 5 people who like to do this thing," you're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, I'll buy that." And I wonder if those kind of concepts could be taken and applied to like, "Oh, I picked up these pretzels and I pick them up. Oh, these are for me." And it probably runs parallel. You probably have seen it.
yeah. Well, I think that is a huge opportunity. I think most of the time CPG brands put in enormous amounts of effort on the front of the packaging. Like that's the sexy side of their design. They go out and they spend a lot of money on the front. And then to your point, I think I see far too often at the back is something that's almost just like, we've got to just get those nutrition labels on there and throw a story about the founder or whatever on there and like get out of here. Like let's wrap it up, kind of a deal. Instead of leveraging it to your point or as a key selling point, which is like this is our moment of conversion.
Hmm.
Yes, we have to have some big information on it about nutrition and ingredients, but are we turning it into a sales opportunity? Yeah. Missed opportunity, I think, by most CPG brands.
Yeah, there's a few, and I don't necessarily know. There's Vital Farms does something cool. It's not in their packaging, but they have a little newspaper inside of their eggs. That one's very exciting. I like the idea of once you get there to like capture it. And then Protein Pints does one cool where you open up the product, and then on the top there's a QR code that just says scan for free stuff. And then before you like peel the ice cream off, you're like, oh, I guess I will scan. And then they go they get your email, they get you on the email list. Like it's awesome. Like, and from my perspective, I like to you know get long-term value out of these guests once they do purchase. But like you're saying, on the back to close that deal, there could be a lot of effort going into those packages.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and a big part of it is knowing who your audience is, right? Making sure that that experience is unique. And so, as you think about Target, for instance, how does a Target consumer differ maybe than from the average retailer experience? What are they looking for that's you make unique?
Traditionally, I would say that we didn't have people that were as sensitive to price, but I think as time has gone on and the D2C world has existed, I think that no, but everybody's sensitive to price now but you can also get premium everywhere too. So like when you're sitting there and your attention is online, every single product in the world has a premium D2C version that has extremely targeted advertisements for guests that overlap with us. And so what I think that Target's really leaning towards, and this has been true of what Fidelki has been saying recently, is just style and design. So we have a very unique and specific viewpoint on what style is. And I think I'm hoping that we can continue to do just awesome things. I've been a part of a ton of different like brand partnership launches that we've done. We recently just did Woolrich, which is awesome because if you go on their website, you're looking at $400 shirts and jackets and shoes, and we got them in here for $30, $40, and they're similar style, similar design. And so I think our guests come in for that experience that feels elevated but still affordable. And I honestly just had it like the other week. I work at Target. I just transitioned everything into Christmas, but I went to another Target with my wife and my son, and we walked around shopping. And I was like, oh man, it feels like Christmas. It smells like Christmas. Like this is so exciting. There's all this newness. And even for me, I was like, oh, let's go get some new candles. And like, oh, this throw pillow is cool. And even though I've seen the product and put it on the shelf, like when you go there and you're not attached to the work of it, it's still exciting, which is probably why I'm still in retail, because I actually find it I find these things exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's experiential, right? Like to your point, there's smells, there's sights, there's memories. Like I can picture what my Target looks like during the holidays. And I can like roll right into that experience because it has all these different sensory elements as part of the process.
But I
So
think a third of our stores have actual scent machines in them this year, which is new and is very exciting. So we're like puffing the smell of Christmas into our stores.
yeah. And do you guys normally just do that during Christmas or do you have, pumpkin spice in the fall
No,
and all
this is
these
the
other
first
things?
time I've ever heard of scent machines. I was really mad my store's not on the list, but my local store, like closer to where I live, they had it and it smells very good.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, maybe this podcast will help you get on the list for next year. But
Yeah, well, I mean, I think too, like when you think about elevated retail, like in Anthropologie, for example, they always have those candles lit when you go into an Anthropologie,
yes.
and you're like, oh yeah, and then those candles are like $80, and you're buying them because it smells so good when you walk into that store. So it's cool.
Yeah. Well, I always go back to like, the mall experience of walking by like what an Abercrombie and Fitch. And like you can smell the cologne like coming out of that place as you're just walking by. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty strong. But right target market, right? It's just connecting the dots for them. And it's just drawing you in because they're connecting multiple senses to this shopping experience. So as you think about like, okay, you've got target customers. It sounds like there's been an evolution. There's a little bit of a change. The market's shifting and adjusting. What are the kind of things that CPG brands can do to think about and maybe capture this kind of shift? We talked back of packaging, but what are other things that you see as a retailer that CPG brands could be doing?
Yeah, so I only know my experience in specific store execution. I know we have like Target specifically offers Roundel and digital marketing and all these things, and I don't. That's not really my wheelhouse. I don't know. But what I do know and I do see all the time is great ISM like will can do it. So in store marketing, if you can pay for a beautiful sign, you can really get away with a lot. And I think there's a ton of opportunity like for CPG buyers to one like just go into the store and look at the shelf after your product is set and like try to find the space around your product. So like let's say your product is sitting on the shelf and there's 4 inches above it that's not being used. Well, that means that you could put something below that 4 inches that you could raise your product up 4 inches, a little cardboard courier shipper. It might cost you some money, but it'll let you educate the guest about what your product is. And I find that the brands that do that find some way to use ISM or creatively use the very valuable retail space that they want, they're going to get more conversions and they're going to put more stuff in baskets. Because what I see a lot of the time is, these brands, they just want to get purchased. They just want to get the purchase order through, and they don't necessarily. I mean, they're like huge win, like get into Target, get on the shelves. But if you're not selling once you're there, like you're not going to get those reorders. You're not going to be able to educate the guest, and especially when you think about like D2C brands that are coming in, you have like a great funnel. I'm sure. I'm sure your website's beautiful, and as I scroll down, I'm going to be educated and I'm going to understand the product and I'm going to get an advertisement that's going to pull at my heartstrings. But when you're just a box sitting on a shelf, you're going to have some way to either do that education or get the guests to get to your website. So I would love to see more, like every single, it's like common practice now to have the barcode and the QR code right next to each other on the product, because I'm sure that when you print it, it comes out right next to each other. I would love to see some QR codes on the front that say like scan to learn more, and like get you to the website that has the great funnel. And then you like do, or put a giant barcode above your, like a giant QR code above your product. I don't know what Target will let you do, but I find that like if you find that you have these really great conversion tools for D2C, try to figure out how to get, people on your website, while they're shopping on their phone. Or and this is something that I want to see more of as well, is like Target will push just for you circle deals. So like if you're a member of our loyalty program, you can get stuff pushed right to you. And man, I would love if I walked into a Target and I get a notification from a brand that I've purchased before, and they're like, hey, just for you, 25% off from this specific brand because they know you like their product. And like if you, I don't know if you can, I know we do that, we do just for you things, but if you can get the wording in there to be like, hey, whatever brand decided that you are worthy of this extra deal today, you'll get lifelong guests like pretty quick.
Yeah. It brings up an interesting point, which is there's this real time opportunity. How have you seen consumers change with just devices while shopping in store? Because I know that's a thing, right? Like all of a sudden, all of us have devices that become like glued to us.
Yep. So,
What does that look like?
well, from a friendliness and engagement standpoint, like eye contact is no longer given, eye contact is earned. And so, like, yes, they're looking down at their phones, they have their AirPods in, but they still are expecting to be greeted and expecting to have a great experience. So, a guest can walk in and look at their phone, walk through the whole store, buy their stuff, and leave, and then they're like, oh, well, no one greeted me, but he didn't really look greetable. But that's like that's the default now. And so I tell my team all the time, like, you have to earn people's eye contact. But on the flip side, like, that means that they might not doing as much exploring as they used to. So like if they're in our app specifically, like obviously we can try to engage with them about getting certain products that they might be looking for. But if they're just like, scrolling TikTok while they shop, or watching some sort of podcast, it's a lot harder for your, ISM to stand out, or for you to, like, if a guest is just going to walk straight to the grocery section and straight out, they might not see this new beautiful end cap we put up in domestic. So from that perspective, I think it's important to have team members that are passionate about creating great experiences, and earning that eye contact and saying, hey, hi, how are you? Like, do you need any help with anything? Hey, we got this new thing over here. Like, that's something that people don't really do that much. And they just say, hey, can I help you find anything? But like, we just set this brand new seasonal sale. Like, hey, have you checked out Christmas? It looks really beautiful back there. And like, just that extra sentence like creates, another 50 footsteps of someone going back in. So I think if brands could, again, if brands could get team members as excited as I am about their product, because I got brands I love, I go out there, I make it my mission, because I want to build my basket. I make it my mission to just go like offer up these brands. I'll tell their stories for them, and I'll help educate the guests, and I'll bring them to things that they may or may not be looking for. But I think that a lot of team members don't have that enthusiasm, and so I would put the challenge on brands to get people that excited about what you're building, in order to get these little advocates everywhere.
Yeah. Well, because the hardest part is getting someone into the store, right? So it's like the moment the foot traffic has arrived and they're there, you have this beautiful opportunity to capture it. It's substantially easier to get them to take those 50 extra steps than it was to get them to get in the vehicle and drive all the way down to
For
their
sure.
local Target and have experience.
And that's another
So
thing that I love about brands. I think about someone like Joyride, and you have Ryan Trahan like getting on YouTube and saying, "Hey kids, go buy Joyride at Target." And it's like, oh man, he's like asking people to come into our stores. So like we better do the right thing and like keep it in stock and keep it on the shelf and show the guests where they are. And when the guests are walking over there, ask them like, "Hey, if you watched the recent video, it's pretty good." Like, and then those guests will want to come back to our store specifically. So brands all throughout Target, especially these D2C brands, make a lot of opportunity to bring new foot traffic into the store that might not have been there before.
yeah, which can create a beautiful partnership, right? As part of the process. So as you're thinking about an in-store experience, there are a lot of steps, stages, or milestones that might take place. Could you maybe just walk us through, like, how do you think about the consumer journey in store? Where does it start and where does it end?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, it's starting in the parking lot, and honestly, on the way to the store. So you think about how many stores a guest has to drive back past in order to get to our store, and how many of them might have had the thing they're looking for. And then as they walk in, they've either got a list or they have a plan or they don't. And so that's the beautiful thing about Target is a lot of people come in to relax and to spend time. And I think that when you think about like a consumer psychology standpoint, I don't know everything. I don't really know much, but I would imagine that people coming into the store are, especially on that more leisurely side, that are just coming to like spend an hour with a friend or catch up, or spend 30 minutes while they're waiting to pick up their kids from school. There's a lot of opportunity for them to. They're in an area of discovery. They're in a mindset of being willing to be sold to, or find something new. Um, and obviously, to go back to your question, they're walking into the store. I guess their journey. Repeat the question for me because it's a little bit confusing.
Yeah, just that journey starts in the parking lot. I think you talked about that, right? Like what what happens next? What's the linear process that they go through when they're
Gotcha.
shopping?
Yeah, so, they're gonna look for a cart or they're not, and they're gonna come in and they're either gonna have a handbasket or a cart or they're not, and that's gonna inform, how much things they're willing to put up with. I find personally, I have my children, and if they're behaving, I'll spend a lot more time inside of a store than if they are not behaving, and if they're not behaving, I'm looking around for somebody to, like, help me find what I'm looking for a little bit faster, and then as you're going through the store, you're gonna look up and down the aisles and try to see, what calls out to you. You're gonna walk to the specific things you're looking for, and that's where we are. That's where the opportunity is really for people to advocate for a brand, or for team members to go and give the guests a great experience while they're physically throughout the store. I think a lot of stores miss that because if you go in, especially like fulfillment has ramped up, you're like dodging shopping carts. So you've got team members in all sorts of stores that are doing fulfillment, and especially at Target, and we're trying to fix that. Where you got these people sprinting through to try to get these packages delivered next day, and they're not greeting guests and they're not engaging, and so that could be part of the experience as well. And then obviously, once they find the stuff they're looking for, they normally leave. Now, I think it was you that might have put a post up the other day, and I was really curious about it. You said, or it was somebody within my network. I think it was you, but it was when you walk into the chip aisle, what is like informing your decision about what new chip to try? Like chip. And so I was like, man, I have no idea why would you buy a chip that's different than anything else? So when you think of what you guys do, that why do people stop and pick up something? I'm also interested to know because that journey of them like walking throughout the store to get the stuff off their lists, and I guess I never have taken the time to go and ask my guests. Obviously I'll try to add stuff to their cart, but I've never asked like, hey, why did you put that thing in your cart? Like, tell me more about that. That's it's such an interesting frame. But then
Yeah.
obviously after, yeah, expand on that for a little bit for me, just 'cause I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we're always trying to figure out, it's like a key part of buyer psychology is not just why do people repeat purchasing, but why do they make decisions for the very first time? And I go back to a question that is like sacred for me when it comes to like guest and customer experience, which is if this thing didn't exist, what would you do? Like it's the replacement theory, basically. If you had to replace this,
Mm,
how would you make the decisions that you're making? So as you think about walking into the chips aisle at a store, and you probably have something that's already in your pantry or your cupboard already, like you've got this thing, and to either replace what you currently buy or add something new is a whole different set of like psychological cycles and like processes that are happening. And so finding that motivation is a really key part of the process. So as you're thinking about like in-store marketing, as you're thinking about all the different things that can play into this role, there will be different motivators or triggers for different customer types. But oftentimes it's the new flavor, which is why you see so much limited edition, like limited time opportunities around new flavors, because that's driving interest, is driving conversation. It's sometimes it's just new color schemes, like same product, right? New packaging. So you're getting something bright or something different, and that clicks with the trends that you're seeing. Because what I always go back to is there's a lot of research that shows people are putting things into their carts or their baskets, not just because they want to consume it, but because it makes them feel a certain way about putting it in their cart. They feel good about buying it. Maybe it's better for you and that makes them feel good. Maybe it's just early adopter or like early trend of a particular product. And so as they have this, I mean, I always kind of go back to this idea of like most of the time, other people, other people can see what's in your basket or your cart. And that influences what you buy because you have a certain perception. If you're the value guy, when you're buying things, you're not just buying what's on your shopping list and saying, how does this provide value for me? You're also asking the question, how does this show other people that I care about value as well? Maybe I'm only getting the private label products, or maybe, and you're seeing that across all these levels of motivations. And so you're constantly asking yourself that question. That's what I'm always coming back to. You've got this thing in your pantry or your cupboard. If it wasn't there, what would you do? And in that process, you learn a lot about how they think about the current product, the Doritos in their pantry versus what's going to get them to try the jalapeno cheddar Cheetos or the pick a
Yeah.
thing somewhere else.
And the question for you then. So what do you think of the reaction from big CPG brands to the proteinification of everything? So you'll see these like really awesome small D2C brands or small brands like make a brand new product. It's like, oh, protein chips, you got Quest, or you got this new type of protein bar, or so. And then the thing I saw recently that made me laugh was Pop Tarts came out with like a 10-gram protein Pop Tarts. And I'm like, who is that for? Because it's not necessarily for the people buying the better for you Pop Tarts, and it's not really for the people that were buying Pop Tarts. It's almost like you're trying to like make a sacrifice in between the two, and maybe they're seeing great success. I actually have no idea. But what do you think about the like bigger CPG as we see these trends and they react to them because they can react quickly? How do you think that plays a role in choosing to stick with what you've always done or go with those new brands that are popping up?
Yeah. Uh, I think that it fits into a couple different categories. One is that sometimes they're using really good data and they're using it as a way to bridge into new segments that their historical products haven't been able to get into. So there's a reason. I always go back to this too. There's a reason why big food is big food.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
they're
yeah.
doing a lot of things right, right? Or big CPG, like they're doing a lot right. So they're not there on accident. They didn't just wake up one day. They're multi billions. They do a lot right, and they're generally mass market appeal. So when they find segments that they aren't getting into, that they can't connect with, you're seeing a lot of these fringe products, these new opportunities for them to say, hey, is this going to be a bridge to a group of customers that historically haven't bought from us? Pop Tarts is a really interesting example. I have tried them. I do not like them. I was just like, these aren't for me.
Yeah.
But I have a really weird relationship with Pop Tarts because I know that they're terrible for you. They're not a healthy thing. They're not a great way to start your morning from a breakfast nutrition standpoint. But I have so much nostalgia from eating Pop Tarts and like wanting Pop Tarts as like the teenager, like grab the tinfoil like pouch with the two in there, maybe toast them, maybe just take the pouch with me and like certain flavors. I'm a blueberry guy, like all the
Well,
things.
that's crazy. I've
So
never heard blueberry. I'm sorry. I had to, we were like a cinnamon household, but I preferred s'mores. But my older brother, like, so I always had to deal with cinnamon. My wife was strawberry. Never met a blueberry by default person. So it puts you in a unique
I
category.
I am a unique category for lots of, but yeah, we got blueberry, then strawberry, and for me, the cinnamon side is at the bottom of the list.
Wow.
Um, because I like a lot of non-toasted Pop Tarts. And so as part of it for me, I don't do the cinnamon unless it's toasted.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but that's part of the challenge, right? Is like you're trying to figure out, is Pop Tart onto something? Like, and this is going to be a bridge into a new customer base, or are they just following trend? And the trend part is dangerous because protein itself is, I think, getting out of hand. Like it's in everything. The quality of the protein isn't the same everywhere. So it's not always like you're getting more protein
Yeah. Yeah.
that's also the quality you expect. There's it's a really interesting world. And I think we're seeing that protein is, it looks a lot like plant-based a few years ago, which is enormous initial excitement. And then as you start looking at how's this actually manufactured, what are the real ingredients, you start to realize this isn't as good as I thought it was. And then the trends start to kind of collapse underneath themselves. I think protein will continue to be an important macro, and the fact that macros are a key part of food
Yeah.
psychology right now is
Yeah.
a thing. But I think it'll continue to be important, but it will normalize. And right now, I think it's out of control. Like I saw cotton candy with protein in it, and I'm just like, who is that for? Obviously not me.
Love it.
So I think fiber is the next protein.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I was surprised. Again, these I normally get the just protein ones. I'm not trying to just like I'm advertising for Orcos. No, but they had the 5 grams of fiber is the difference between this and the old one, which is the same exact product on the shelf next to each other. I will say these ones taste significantly worse than the other ones. I don't know if the fiber makes them taste that much worse, but uh,
Yeah, it makes a difference. But
I'm seeing it
I
pop up.
think also, yeah, we'll start to see fiber in lots of things. And I think part of the challenge is you get a handful of statistics that come out of research, and then suddenly everyone was like, here's the gap, right? And emerging brands have the ability to move the fastest in that space and try everything out. And then once you see that that trend has some staying power, that's when the big players move in and they try to connect the dots between their brands that have so much meaning and value in our lives, whether we want to admit it or not. Because you're like, these are just Cheetos, but yeah, there's a place in our lives for them, and that's when they then can rotate those in and do really well sometimes.
Cool. No,
But
I can't
yeah,
wait to see some fiber infused, protein infused Totino's pizza rolls. I feel like that's going to be
hey,
comments.
there's a
That's for
time and
me
a place.
specifically. When you think about a product made for who's it for? If they made some Totino's pizza rolls with some extra protein and fiber, all day long.
100%, right? Then you're covered. So,
Yeah,
a- and that's the key part, I think. And I would imagine, right? Like you see that all the time in Target, which is who comes in and shops. There's so much diversity, right? Like why they're there and what they care
yeah,
about. And I think it's easy to get caught up sometimes. Like what I'm always kind of preaching from my pulpit is like, don't show up and treat everybody as like one homogenous blob. And I think retailers and CPG teams do this all the time, which is like, we're a Gen Z brand, or we're for millennial moms, or pick a thing. And in the process, you're removing the fact that we're all wildly diverse in what we care about and why we do it. And there are core connection points. Um, but in this process, like if 100 people walk into your store, they're all going to be wildly different. And in that process, only 9 of them might actually care about this product. And so as a CPG brand, I think oftentimes we think that every person that pushes that, Target cart through the doors is our customer. And
yeah.
that's just not the case.
Yeah, no, that's not always true. I think I saw you posted something recently that said it was like most of the money is still within the boomer hands. And so it's like if you are saying like, oh, we're a Gen Z brand, you're actually eliminating like a lot of possibility of dollars that could be going towards your brand if you were to market it more broadly and say like, hey, we're for this, specific type of person, not necessarily sanctioned by age.
Yeah. Well, that comes from the fact that just time and time again, every marketing team that I meet with all the time and brand teams, they're they're almost antagonistic about like marketing to fixed income, retirees, baby boomers. Like it doesn't win any awards. That's what I always go back to. Like there's always this feeling, I think, within branded marketing, where there's this desire for it to be sexy and interesting. And like, I want to be personally passionate about how this happens. And it's like the passion is in connecting the dots between your brand and their needs and wants. And, but I think a lot of times we look past it. And I'm just watching all these teams and organizations ignore the customers that might actually be buying the already.
Yeah. A really great example of that, I was talking to Max Sherwood from Zuru. They have Millie Moon diapers, all sorts of brands, but we were talking about diapers specifically. And he said when they were coming up with Millie Moon, which is like the most successful diaper that we saw at Target, it's incredible. They had all this market research surveys that they were doing with their customers, and every single one, it wasn't a question on the list. They were asking about absorbency and fit and stretch and whatever, but everybody kept coming back to them and saying, "This is the softest diaper we've ever touched. This diaper's so soft." And they're like, "We didn't even know that people cared about this diaper being soft." He's like, but then as soon as they said it, it made so much sense. And so they're like, oh, we guys should put that on the packaging, or we should let the guests know, like, hey, your baby's gonna love how soft the diaper is. And that became, what they were selling more than the most absorbent, the newest and most fancy manufactured diaper because technology's gotten so much better.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why we have to be talking to customers and guests, right? Like if you're not having conversations with your guests, you're missing out on the opportunity to learn things through qualitative interactions, right? Through actually talking and discussing, there'll be things that no survey is ever going to give you answers to. And they just come from having those personal interactions because at the end of the day, retail is a human experience. And I think it's easy to get caught up in this like transactional component of average order sizes and all these other things, right? But when we remember like, hey, this is a very human experience, I think we discover lots of things that we couldn't have ever thought of before otherwise. So I'd like to give you an opportunity kind of that time to wrap it up with like what's your best advice for people that are listening around buyer psychology and ultimately just understanding why people buy and perhaps encouraging and persuading them in the process. What advice do you have?
Yeah, I don't know how much my advice is worth, but I think, like we just said, asking for feedback, but understanding in those moments when you're asking for feedback to like not be defensive. One of my favorite things to go back to is like if you read a restaurant's reviews on Google, the owner of the restaurant's normally in there like arguing with the guests about like, no, your experience wasn't bad. We're the best restaurant ever. It's like, hey, maybe their perspective like can add some value, and they just said clean up your bathrooms. And so if you think from that sort of perspective, when you're seeking that feedback, like if people are willing to give time to give you feedback, that means they care. And so that that when you act on that care, you're going to gain lifelong guests and lifelong customers. And then the other part is just create the excitement with the people who are selling your brand. And so I know that this isn't something I see a lot of, but if someone did it right, I think it would be awesome. If people came to Target and Target team members and say, hey, we want you to be excited about these specific things, we would be out here selling your stuff. And that's what I try to do with my team because I'm personally passionate about it. And I want to build this model where, we create, team members that are passionate about actively selling and about building baskets and getting people to try things that are new. So those would be my two pieces of advice. So just galvanize the people selling your product, get them to do it more for you. And that is also your customers. Your customers are the ones making the recommendations. But when you give them, a really great experience, like let's say, I think Will Guardia, or the guy who wrote Unreasonable Hospitality, always talks about how when you mess up, it's a really great opportunity to like win someone over forever. It's almost a better opportunity than if you just had delivered like what their expectations were, because you can really wow them in the way that you mess up. So when you look at your customer support data and someone opened up a product and it wasn't the way it was supposed to be, go the extra mile because they'll tell their friends and family like, oh, this brand's awesome. And then they probably won't switch.
Yeah. Yeah. You have the opportunity to show them how much you care in that moment. So, well, thank you for your time, Ben. Really appreciate the insights and the unique perspective that you share. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so
Hey,
much.
thanks so much. It was an honor.
Yep.
That was fun.